Welcome to a video where I showcase 5 things that you may or may not know. Some of these facts may be in plain sight to some, but for others, this may be the very first time that you hear about them. Let's get started. Starting things off, did you know? The way spikeweeds pull in enemies that step on them can actually have some rather interesting interactions depending on what they are doing right as they get snared. For example, if a super brains uses a heroic kick right over a spikeweed, they'll fly over the spikeweed at first, but will then be magnetically pulled back towards it. Whilst humorous, this can be turned up to an extreme amount by having someone go through the portal in Z-Tech Factory. If you can get the timing just right, you can cause them to just go in circles at a rapid pace, which can sometimes send them flying off in a random direction. Whilst this is not exactly practical, it can lead to some hilarious moments where enemies think they've escaped the spikeweed only to be sucked right back in thanks to the power of bullshit. Secondly, did you also know, in the Gifts of Plunder mission, if the player is to head over to the side and look just along the river, they can see the same ships from the previous mission, resting in the water just off to the side. This is a neat little attention to detail that some players may not notice during their first playthrough. Again, whilst not exactly practical, it is nice to see that PopCap sprinkle in these occasional little details within their missions and games. Heading over to BFM, did you know? In Giddy Park, scattered across various stalls, are these little globe-like objects and plushies representing the various classes. However, if one is to look closely at them, they may seem familiar. This is because these exact same assets were taken from Seeds of Time, as shown right here. Outside of a minor texture change, the assets look exactly the same, just in different lighting. Whilst it's not uncommon practice to see game developers reuse assets in their games, seeing assets that were meant for a particular map, such as the Seeds of Time globes being in Giddy Park, does look slightly out of place. That, or it could be a reference to that map from Garden Warfare 2. Next, heading back to the aforementioned game, did you know there's a neat little trick you can do in the Royal Hypno Flower Boss Hunt mission that allows you to complete it in record time? Simply put, select a high damage character such as Party Imp or Toxic Brains and play the mission as normal right until after you cure yourself from the first Super Gotify event. Then the moment the Royal Hypno Flower begins to initiate the charge up phase, attack her weak spot constantly as to deal as much damage as possible. If you are fast enough, then you can actually bypass one of the Super Gotify phases, and in some cases, if you have enough damage, you'll be able to bypass both remaining Gotify phases and win the fight in mere seconds. This can be useful if you plan on speedrunning the mission and killing the Royal Hypno Flower in record time. Have fun getting 0.2 milliseconds faster with each run. Lastly, heading over to Moonbase Z, did you know the giant magnet device at the end of the map can end up doing either one of two things? It will either pull the earth into a solar eclipse if the zombies win, or explode into flames if the plants win. However, what you may not know is that part of the model for the damage version can actually be triggered early by shooting it. This is normally not possible in normal circumstances, but if one is able to get on the roof of the final area, then they can just shoot at the base of the magnet and set off the damaged part early. Granted, this has no impact on the final result if the zombies do end up winning, as it is purely a visual change that's supposed to appear during the cutscene where the plants win. This is likely behavior that wasn't intended, especially since PopCap coded the cutscene to trigger by damage dealt by the game, not expecting players to somehow do it themselves. And whilst again, not practical in any circumstances, it is great to mess around with in private play with friends.